Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll go ahead and get started in just a second as I get our guests added. Give me 1 second here.
Hello.
Hi.
Did I do this right?
Yeah.
You did. Hi, Dr. Kim. I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to get Dr. Baker in here as well. All right. It's good to see you. Hi, Milan.
Hi.
Hello.
All right, I think. Okay. Excellent. Hi, Dr. Baker.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me okay?
We can
Yeah.
hear you great.
Perfect.
All right, excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing myself. My name is Carter. I'm a medical student member on the ACEPS social media team, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Milan to introduce herself.
Yes. Hi. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Milan. I'm currently a medical student at UCLA and one of the interns for Garnes Society this year. And we're so happy to have you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
And
for inviting us.
Dr. Kim, if you'd go ahead and like to just introduce yourself for us.
Sure. I am Esther Kim. I am Associate Program Director at UCSF. I've been here, I don't know, 10 plus years, and been involved in, APD for the last 5 to 6 years.
Awesome. And Dr. Baker, would you like to do so as well?
Yeah, so I'm interim chair at MedStar Plastic Surgery and the program director at Georgetown MedStar Plastic Surgery, where I think I've been program director since 2007, back when Scott Spear was the chair.
Great. And thank you again to everybody who participated in making this event possible. Tonight, our focus is on letters of recommendation and personal statements. However, if there are any questions in the chat that are pertaining to the application, ERAS, anything that you'd like to know as it's leading up to submission date, please feel free to drop those and we will get to those as we see them. But I'll go ahead and start out with a letters of recommendation question. And I'm going to start with Dr. Kim. And first, the question is going to be, what individual, when you're rotating on an away rotation, should you be looking to ask for a letter of recommendation from? Whether it be somebody that you are in a lot of cases with, or are you looking for the chair of that program?
I honestly, I do not think it really matters if it's the chair of the program or the program director. I think it's really hard to get to know someone really well in a sub-by rotation for students. Especially because a lot of places, including mine, the students rotate different sites and you spend maybe a week or 10 days within one service, and maybe your interaction with that attending maybe only once or twice in the operating room. So I think it makes it very difficult. So I think the first thing you should do is figure out what kind of letters the residency provides. Is it a committee letter or is it an individual letter? A lot of places do not write individual letters because they do a lot of committee letters because of the challenges I just explained. Even at UCSF, we also do a committee letter. I think it's best to just kind of figure that out. I think if you talk to residents or something, I think they'll be very honest about what kind of letters the program provides, and who is the person to contact about that. I think committee. I like committee letters. It's not. I think it tells us how they did in that rotation. It takes a pool of the attendings and the residents when they write a committee letter. So I think I look at the committee letter as how they have performed as a sub-by. Sometimes if it's an individual letter, and you just got it from somebody famous or a chief of that program, I think, I have to really question some of that unless they had a lot of interaction with them. And I question it's not as representative of the person doing the sub, how they performed in a sub-I.
And
Dr.
did you
Baker, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with a lot of Dr. Kim's comments. I would say as a program director, I fully expect the people rotating to ask for a letter. So I'm very proactive with them and say, I know you're going to ask for a letter. You're going to work with people. I will write the letter, and any individual that you feel you have a close relationship can be a co-author to that letter. And also, like Dr. Kim said, it's a composite letter. We have all the faculty and all the residents enter comments on a Google Drive. And what I'll do is I'll enter those comments into their letter. So it's verbatim comments from the staff in real working time so that the reader of the letter gets a pretty honest sense of how they did. And I tend to only write positive comments, but a lot of positive comments are more positive than a couple positive comments. So that's how the person reading the letter gets a sense of, how the different people compared. And I would say this, I've had some people approach me for a letter where I really don't think I can write them the letter they want. And I will be very honest and tell them that I'm not going to sabotage somebody. And I think as a student, you can say, can you write me a positive letter? And I would hope that the letter writer would have the wherewithal and the honesty to have that conversation. It's a tough conversation, but I think in my sense, it's much more fair to have it up front than to have the student entrust you for a letter that they think is going to be good, and then you've potentially sabotaged them. So I actually had that conversation this year. I said, I'm happy to write it. This is what I'm going to say. If you can get a better letter, do it. But we're here if, you need us.
I think that's a really great point. And just to build off of that, you talked a little bit about a lot of good comments being better than fewer good comments. But when you guys are looking at letters of rec in an application, how are you evaluating? What things are you looking for in addition to the good comments to really understand that applicant and their fit for your program?
Dr. Kim?
Are we only talking about the sub-I letter or just letters in general now?
We can talk about both if you would like. So maybe we can start with sub-I letters since that's what people are probably generating right now, and then general letters as well.
So I think as someone who's been involved in this process for a while and reading a lot of applications and a lot of letters, I can say that the plastic surgery faculties who read this or who write these, we all have a understanding of I call it the letter of recommendation currency. And we understand that what the value of that currency is by the choice of words that they use or what is said. Most of the letters are positive, okay? But we can tell by when there's a statement saying the best resident that I've ever worked in, top 3 best resident or student I've ever worked with, or probably the strongest sub-I we had this season, we will rank this person to match at our program, or like there's basically a currency, and so and also I think it adds like who is the letter writer. If I know somebody who's writing this letter personally, and it kind of and know how they are, it kind of adds to that currency a little bit, you know. So I think it's important. Most people have a letter from somebody they did research in, somebody, their program director probably, and then maybe their chief, and then a sub-I letter, right? And so those are the important ones. And it's important to, but I wouldn't just get it if they from the chief if you're not close to that person. I think it's best to get a letter, a personal letter from somebody who really knows you. But that being said, do not go and get it from somebody that general surgery, somebody who you rotated with and you just have a bond with that person, because that currency is going to trade very differently than the plastic surgeon who's writing that letter.
And I would add, I'd stay away from community plastic surgery letters of recommendation. I mean, it's just their world and exposure to what's out there is much different than the top people that are coming through the big institutions. I think one of the other difficult things for the letter is the ACEPS form that asks the writer to evaluate 1, 2 through 5, 5 through 10, 10 through 20, greater than 20. I try to take that very seriously. I mean, at least, I will rank, I think, 1 student, maybe sometimes I've done 2, 1. and then I'll try to do no more than 5, 2 through 5, and 5 through 10. And I'll be honest with you, you kind of sink somebody with 10 through 20. Although if I look at our rank list, I'd be happy with 4 of the top 30. I mean, you're talking like the most outstanding people in medicine applying for the best specialty, not the best specialty, a very, very selective specialty. Let me rephrase that. So, unless somebody is like a psychopath, everybody up there is smart enough and they've done really, really, really impressive things. So I I kind of say, like, when I write 5 through 10, that means on our rank list, they're one away from matching. Like, we would be really happy to have them. But it's hard because I think a lot of people, if you see 10 through 20, it's like, because there's a lot of rank inflation. There's a lot of people that it's like 2 through 5. Okay, so I've read 8 letters from you, and they're all 1 or 2 through 5. So, it kind of loses its credibility a little bit. And I think, hopefully between the comments on the letter and the content of the letter of recommendation, and when I write my letter, the opening sentences, you can see their academic accomplishments from the CV. The content of this letter is to describe characteristics that are not found on the CV, to give the person reading the letter a little more context about the ability, because I think, all the things on your CV are predictive of performance, but the best predictor of performance is performance. And where you see that performance is a 4-week rotation. So if I've got somebody that's hustling and they've got situational awareness and they know how to assist and they're well prepared and they're a team player, uh, a low board score kind of disappears, couple high passes, maybe even a pass goes away, because all those are predictors of performance. And, you know, and I really, really try to emphasize that with the Georgetown students and the other students, with whom I participate in mentoring, but even sometimes teeing them up and really spelling out expectations for excellence, they still sometimes fall short. And that's kind of frustrating. But, you know, um, you really, really want to perform well to get a letter that kind of reflects your ability to perform really well. And in my opinion, those are the letters that when I read them carry a lot of weight to me from people who I know and trust. Because there's a lot of people I know and I'm friends with them, but everybody's the best, so, so, you know, it's,
Yeah,
you got to maintain your credibility or your letters the following year don't carry weight. So.
yeah. I want to comment just briefly about the ranking that Dr. Baker mentioned in the forms, the letter forms. That is can be interpreted so differently by so many different people. So that letter has been updated now by the ACEPS. There's a new form, and I think the way it reads is the ranking part. It reads more like rank to match because programs have different numbers of positions, and then there's like happy to match, I think, or will be very happy to match, and I like likely will match, but not is and then and then so forth and so forth. I think there's so it's different categories so that it's easier to interpret now.
That's good because, just a little historical data. That original form came straight out of Henry Kawamoto's Craniofacial Fellowship. That's how far back that goes, verbatim, and remained unchanged for decades. And it's kind of harsh when you're talking about medical students, because that was talking about a select few group of people applying for craniofacial fellows who had already done plastic surgery. And yet you're using the same criteria to evaluate medical students, which I always thought was a little off. So I'm glad to hear that they've updated it, Esther.
Thank you so much for those excellent answers and giving us a little bit of insight into what it looks like from maybe assistant program director and program director sides of how these forms are perceived. Dr. Kim, I know that I've heard a little bit from you before about what it means if you're asking for maybe a general surgery letter of recommendation or a letter of recommendation outside of the specialty of plastic surgery. Would you mind expanding a little bit upon how that might affect the currency of the 4 letters that you're able to obtain?
So the only time the general surgery letter will be valuable is if you didn't, let's say that you're currently you didn't match and you're doing a internship somewhere and you're reapplying for plastic surgery, I think you definitely should get a letter from the program director of that general surgery program. Okay, that carries weight because that's evaluating how you did as a performance for that whole year. Otherwise, if you're doing it as like, okay, I did a clerkship rotation and I really did well in this general surgery rotation, that does not, I don't think you should be getting a letter from that. That doesn't carry much currency value in applying for a plastic surgery program. Let's say that you were you were going into surgery, you didn't really reach plastic surgery, and you ended up doing research with that general surgeon. I think you should probably get a letter from that general surgeon because you did research with that person. Just know that other letters that you get needs to be from plastic surgery faculty.
Yeah,
I think
I would
those are the
agree.
only scenarios.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with Dr. Kim.
Yeah.
I would add this for the people who don't match, because likely there will be some people on this call who don't match. I think there used to be kind of a stigma for somebody who didn't match. I think as competitive and fallible as the process is, at least in my opinion, that stigma is not there. We've actually developed a plastic surgery focused transitional year at MedStar that takes top unmatched applicants and puts them in a very plastic surgery focused year where they have an opportunity to prove themselves. There's somebody who that everybody in our program liked last year. See, some people were like, we need to rank her to match. For whatever reason, she didn't match. She's doing that program this year and absolutely crushing it, crushing it. Jack Rutland, one of our second year residents, same thing. He had a really impressive application. For whatever reason, it didn't match. But I say this because sometimes people are like, should I do a research year? I'm not so sure the research year is as much of a predictor as performance. I'm not saying don't do it, but I do think that, doing a tailored year of transitional where you really have the ability to show people what you can do. And then, like Dr. Kim says, get that program director of general surgery to say not only did they kill it on plastics, but vascular, trauma, oncology. And then you've got the letters from the plastic surgeons to complement that. I think that'll be a pretty competitive, applicant when they reapply. And I say this because it's tough and it's so imperfect and really, really good people don't match. And it's heartbreaking. And I've had those phone calls with people, but don't give up. There are other ways to become a plastic surgeon, and perseverance is a huge part of success.
That's a really great answer. We definitely got a lot of questions of people asking that were in general surgery at this time and want to transition to plastics in the future. So I'm glad that you guys were able to answer that. Speaking of that, we got one question in the chat that was wondering a little bit about for people that are applying that do not have home programs, how you're looking at their letters of rec and how you think they should go about getting letters of rec as well.
That's a whole talk I have. In fact, I just gave it to the students at the City University of New York, and I give it to we kind of mentor the Howard students, and I've given it to some other ones. But, I think, getting back to what Dr. Kim says, you do want letters from known people. So really try to reach out locally if there are any programs and see if you can get mentorship. So we mentor the George Washington students as well as the Howard students and really try to get them in. But let's say you're in the Midwest or you're in New York. So for the City University of New York, I said reach out to Dr. Taub, reach out to other places, see if you can do a rotation, see if you can get involved in research. And it's a little late for the fourth years applying now, but if you're a first or second year on this call right now, there are strategies. And if you're at a medical school and you want to reach out to me directly, I literally have about a 30-minute talk exactly on that topic, and I'd be happy to give it to anybody that reaches out.
That's excellent, Dr. Baker, and thank you for sharing that with us. I'm sure you will probably have plenty of people reaching out to you for that very specific talk. And so we have another question that is kind of getting a little bit off of the topic of personal statements, but I think it might be this one is specific to people without a home program, but I think a lot of people with home programs are probably wondering the same thing. So with signaling, how many programs would you recommend students applying to outside of their signals, whether it be all of them or just what they're allotted?
You know, Signals was trying to create, last year you guys got 5. This year we're giving 20, and that was decided by PDs at the ACEPS level. And the reason we're trying to do signaling is so that it saves the students some money, actually, so that you don't have to apply to all the programs. I think we're mirroring orthopedics. They went from low number to a higher number, and that's when they saw a decreased number of applications per program. So students didn't apply everywhere anymore. So I don't know what the right answer to actually give, how many programs should you apply to above your signal level. Yeah, I really can't qualify about that. I
I
would not want you to apply more than 20, but I think it depends on how competitive a student you are.
Yeah, I think signals are interesting. Some people, I think Vanderbilt's like we take the people that rotated and the people that signaled, and that's on our interview list. Well, if interest alone mattered, my life would have turned out much differently. I wanted to be a pro tennis player at some point. I think I wanted to be a race car driver. I really wanted it, but I didn't get it. So, I not to be mean, a, a signal's a tiebreaker. We get 350 applications, we interview 40, you get it down to like 85 that you like, it's a coin flip. How do I choose between? And then it's like, well, if one signaled and one didn't, it matters. But I think we have a good enough program. I'm going to pick the best people, whether they signaled or not. And if they accept an interview and they come to visit us and they see what we're about, I think we have a good shot at selling them on the program. And that's always worked. So I don't want to be dismissive of signals because they're really important to a lot of programs. But at least at Georgetown, we're going to look for who we think are the best people for the culture of our program. And that's important. Not the best people, but the best people that would fit with us, which is different. It's like Herb Brooks says in the movie Miracle, which is no one here remembers it, but it's when the Americans beat the Russians. I'm not looking for the best players, I'm looking for the best team. And what we're looking for is we're looking for the best team, which may not be the prettiest applicant, but somebody that will fit with our culture, work really hard with our team, and will be highly coachable.
I think that's a great way to think about that, looking for the team versus just the person. And I think on that note, we kind of had some students that were wondering, when you're signaling, you're saying, I'm interested in this program. And similarly, when you're sending letters of recommendation, you're also saying the same thing. And some people were wondering in the chat, if you do a sub-I and they write you a letter of recommendation, is it better that you send that same letter of recommendation to the program or use that space to send a different letter from another program or somebody else to them so that they can see maybe more variety of your skills?
Are you allowed to do that? Kind of pick and choose which letters go to which applications, or is it a standard ERAS?
I think some you can, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure.
I mean, I'll defer to Dr. Kim too, but I would say if you rotated at Georgetown, we know who you are. So if you can give us 4 letters from people other than that, it would be helpful. But I didn't know you could kind of pick and choose where your letters go for programs. But Dr. Kim, do you have any insight on that?
I heard that you can do that. That was interesting. Yeah, but since we're using the eras for the first time with Thalamus, I have a feeling you can do that. Yes, I think it's not. But here's the thing. Yes, I would like to know about what other programs thought. But then the applicant may be questioning, well, if I don't use the letter that they gave me, do they think that, like, did I not use it in everywhere else? Because they think, like, it's like second guessing yourself, right? Did I not perform well? And so I'm not using, how they look upon that. So I think it's tricky. Just ask for one letter and just use that. Don't, give yourself less stress, and where you think you performed well, and just get that letter and use that. I would think, 4 letters, or if you use 5, just give all 5. Maybe it'll be like good.
Can
I
you
think
give
it's
5
easier.
letters with ERAS? It's been so long since I've done ERAS. I can't remember.
I think it's only 5. I think 5 is max.
Good, good.
Yeah. Um, yeah.
And one thing, get all your stuff together to your letter writers. I mean, I said, I had my coordinator say, I need all the materials by the 12th. I don't want to be writing 15 letters 2 days before they're due. And yet people haven't sent their ERAS, their CVs, and this is such a shooting yourself in the foot. And I'm going to be hardcore about this. And I know that there's going to be some of them, Dr. Baker, I didn't get it. And I'm going to tell the coordinator, you tell them they have to call me and present their case, and I will give them the feedback on that. So, I mean, really control everything that's controllable. I mean, it's like showing up late on a Teams meeting with your program director. Have it together, have it in, show that you're organized, because all this is part of your interview. You come flying in at the last minute and things trickling in. You're showing people what you're about, and that's disorganized and not tight. And that those are not, you know, things that are compatible with what we're looking for surgery residents. So come in crisp, clean, organized, and on time.
Absolutely. And I think there's an interesting question that we had come in that kind of ties into a conversation we've been having before about the signals. And people are wondering, how do they make, in your personal opinion, the best use of their signal statements?
I would I would really be strategic about it. Just I think there's gonna be programs who don't use signals at all, like the Georgetown from Doctor. You heard it from him, so if you're interested in their program, you should just apply. But there's gonna be programs that do only signals. I've heard of that. They only look at people who rotated and only look at signals, and use that to get their interview list. Um, but there'll be programs that if you didn't signal, they may not even offer an interview because you're not interested in their program. So I would say use the signals strategically. Really signal the programs that you want to go to mostly, and also signal just like applying for maybe college, and have some realistic programs. Have some ones that are like you're better than you're basically a safety basket of programs maybe, and then maybe shoot for programs that are like your stars, maybe a few of them. I think maybe that should be the strategy. If I was applying, I might do something like that.
Yeah, spread your bets. Shoot for the stars, solid, realistic, and some safeties. And then try to detail while you're signaling the program.
Yeah, you have to write a
And
little paragraph while
yeah,
you're signaling.
don't say it's like I like, half smokes at Ben Chili Bowl and the Nationals are good and I like Jaden Daniels. That's not going to fly. Or my partners from DC, or we really like the Potomac. No,
Not
look
gonna
up the
work.
faculty, look at what they're excellent at. And Esther, we actually had a Georgetown student go to UCSF. I go, why are you going to UCSF? I go, well, you can't go out there and say you like sourdough bread and you want to see the Golden Gate. You need to look up every faculty member, look at the papers they've written, see what their areas of expertise are, and act like you've done some research on why you want to be there. So similar approach to your signal statements, even if you don't know, do the research, play the game, show that you've researched it and you have a real reason for wanting to be there.
I
That's
mean, that's
based
really
on
good
plastic
advice, because
surgery.
that's a question I ask probably every sub-I that comes to my room. Why are you doing a sub-I here?
Exactly.
That's great advice. Good to have your answer on deck when that happens. I think soon we'll transition to talking a little bit more about like personal statements. But before we do that, we just wanted to open the floor to see if either of you had any more advice about letters of recommendation before we transition over?
Um, I mean, don't be hesitant to approach program directors. I think it's their job to kind of, or APDs to kind of commandeer the process. If somebody wants my name on it, but they really worked closely with their faculty, I'll say, would you like us to co-write the letter? Like I'll try to bring it together and get the signatures they want on it. And say, can you write me a favorable letter or a strong letter? And hopefully the person will have the integrity to be honest on the feedback with you to help you, know if you're going to get that letter. And then I would say, if you do an away, try to get a letter from at least your early aways, because if you did 3 aways where you could have gotten letters and all 4 of your letters are from your home institution, it's a little bit of a red flag. So try to get at least 2 or 3 away rotation letters to show that there's always grade inflation at home because the dean of the medical school is putting pressure on you to match their kids. And, I'm pretty honest. I don't play into that as much, but if I coach you to be good and hopefully we get you to where you're good, we can write you a good letter. But you want to show that you've done well at each of the places where you've rotated. And then what I like to see is, let's say you went to UCSF medical school and Esther says number one. And I said, okay, Esther, you're number one. But then you went to UW and they said 2 through 5. And you went to Penn and they said number one. Now it's like, okay, Dr. Kim says she's awesome. And then it's validated by these other people. That's a great candidate, if you can get that. I think that's what we're all looking for, right, Dr. Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm pretty honest too with my letters. So, because you want, as I say, it's a currency and you don't want to have any fake money. And I don't want my
Right.
colleague, Dr. Baker, over there, like late next time saying, I don't trust her because her letters are always inflated. This is an inflated currency. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty honest about it. Most of the letters are positive, but it's how I view that person. I think it'll come through.
Excellent. And thank you for the final closing statements on letters of recommendation for the time being. I want to ask an interesting personal statement question that we had submitted. And some people are wondering, how important is the personal statement in the grand scheme of letters of recommendation, step scores, research, and can it determine whether or not an applicant is awarded an interview?
Um, do you want me to go first,
Yeah,
Stephen?
go ahead, Dr. Kim.
Okay, so personal statements, honestly, for me, I probably look at it last. I don't look at it first because after reading 300 or plus of them, they all kind of sound the same to me after a while. It's hard for me to remember personal statements unless it's really different. There's a story in there that's so different. But the personal statements are more of a screen for me at the end to see if they are psychotic or narcissistic or like this is just so weird. I can't like this personal statement is too weird. So I think that's how I view the personal statement. So I think it's important for the personal statement to just read well and not be too long. And unless you have a story really you need to share that is unique.
Yeah. I mean, I would say none of us are Pulitzer Prize winners, and you don't need to try to write a Pulitzer Prize winning essay on your personal statement. Most plastic surgeons aren't that special. Be honest. The honest reason why you want to be a plastic surgeon for most people is going to be good and it will be authentic. What Dr. Kim said, in rare cases, somebody wins an Olympic medal, gets in a car crash, gets rebuilt, whatever, oh, wow. And you can verify it, because I do go on social media and look at this stuff. And then the other is what Dr. Kim said, some, narcissistic, something where they just bury themselves. And you can just kind of see, there was a applicant from a pretty good school And, I like swimming because it's just me in the lane by myself. I don't depend on anybody else. And I'm just thinking, yeah, surgery's a team sport. It's not you alone in a pool looking at the black stripe. And then that school was calling me, oh, she really wants to go to Georgetown. And it was an Ivy League med school. But, again, we're looking for the team. We're not looking for individuals. And so I think if you're honest and authentic, you don't have to write some earth-shattering thing. And then the other thing is we had a medical student last year, and she actually matched at USC, and she's good. And she did. I mean, she did have a story where she lost her parents and her brother, and they had to run a deli. And I mean, it was legit, and I knew it. But I'm like, okay, two sentences on the deli. You don't need to go over a paragraph. It was 3 slices of ham and prosciutto, and the Swiss cheese was good that day. Like, enter in a sentence or two and then get to plastic surgery. Don't dwell on it. And then my final comment on the personal statement, which is a real world scenario from today, is if you've got a CV where you've got 10 publications and 5 of them are dermatology and 5 of them are plastic surgery, and you're the president of the dermatology interest group, do not start your personal statement. I knew I wanted to be a surgeon since I entered medical school, blah, blah. I literally called them up. I'm like, no, you didn't. Dermatology is not a surgical specialty. It's okay to say you were interested in dermatology and then found plastic surgery more interesting. But, kind of make sure your personal statement aligns with the rest of your application because, and I know he is interested in plastic surgery, but he needs to kind of frame his letter to reflect what's on his CV. And because if I didn't know him and I read that, I'd be like, oh, you're full of it. You didn't want to be a surgeon. You were going to be a dermatologist. So just make sure it aligns with everything else in your CV and your application.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit. Like, don't dwell. I see so many like personal statements where you talk about your, I don't know, something, a hobby or maybe something that you did in college, and you try to tie that into plastic surgery, and you just like kind of dwell on it, and you kind of talk about, I don't know, the musical note and the intricacy of like playing this instrument and the music and how it associates with the art of microsurgery, and like just goes on and on. Please don't do that. I think it's just too much. Just short, like what you got out of that, maybe what you learned from that. And maybe that's a skill or something you just got that you are using in your life and to be successful in what you're doing. I don't think I need a analogy of how music ties into the OR surgical steps.
And lots of people do that. So you're not being singled out. And so many people do it that I don't really count it against them, but I just kind of roll my eyes and grind through the personal statement,
Exactly. We
It's like
grind through it. I'm like, where's the meat? Exactly where I'm trying to get to the meat.
But
That's a
really, we're not expecting that much. I mean, an honest answer. I came into surgery, I didn't know what I wanted. I really like plastic surgery, the depth, the mood, the vibe. We did reconstruction, we did aesthetic, we did hand, we did pediatric, we did, I mean, it's a pretty cool specialty, and we all love it. So it's not that hard to sell it for honest reasons. I can't imagine somebody not loving it. So just tell us why you love it.
Absolutely. Um, Another question that we had come in is how long do you make the personal statement? Do you try and fit it on a page? Do you break it up into paragraphs, one long paragraph? What's the formatting that you two prefer to read?
I have to say, shorter the better. I don't think it should be more than a page, that much, and regular font, not like nine. You know, I think it should be in paragraph form so that it's a little organized. Um, I don't think it needs to be 5 paragraphs or whatever it works out to. 3 to 5 will be acceptable. I think if they're long paragraphs, you should make it shorter to fit within one page, no more than that.
Yeah, my favorite's about 3/4 of a page.
Yeah,
And be concise. If somebody's just going verbose and rambling, I think Dr. Kim and I are going to be really like going, what's this person going to be like in the OR? Wah, 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 wah. we're surgeons, we're not psychiatrists. Short, to the point, in, out.
I think that's our personality. There may be people who love it, but I think surgeons are in and out, concise, to the point.
Those are great points. We were also wondering when you finish writing your personal statement, who do you think should review it, or who should you bring it to review it and edit it?
Someone who you trust, someone who you know, who knows you well. I mean, can you read this and give feedback? Someone you did research it with, maybe someone who's kind of involved in the residency application process,
Yeah.
who are familiar. So, yeah, I read a lot of personal statements, and I give them, I can't finish this statement. Can you go make it shorter? You lost me in this one. I don't know what to.
Yeah, I would echo what Dr. Kim says. I'd have your APD or your PD, but the people that are reading them, I'm not going to micromanage it, but it's very easy to pull out red flags, something that might rub an evaluator the wrong way. And the people that'll be able to have the best experience at looking at that will be the people that read everybody else's personal statements every year. So hopefully you have a good relationship with your APD or your PD. And then if you're from a school that doesn't have it, you could maybe um, have your dean, student affairs dean, or, I mean, honestly, I'd be happy to read it. I mean, send it to a plastic surgeon. I don't have a ton of time. I don't want to get 300 personal statements tomorrow because I have to read them again. But, if you don't have a home program and you're really wondering, because when I read them for students, I do it all the time. I'm not writing it. I'm just like red flags or no red flags. And I can do that pretty quickly.
Excellent. And another question we had was, students are taking a lot of research years these days, and how important is it for them to highlight their experience of their research year in their personal statement, or is that something that you can kind of gather the information from their CV and they shouldn't spend too much time on that subject?
I don't, as I said, the personal statement is the last thing I read, and it's like, do we have a red flag or not? So I really don't think you need to really spend too much time about the research here on a personal statement. I think you can highlight. It's like one or two sentences, maybe. I don't. But you can tell on the application if they did a research here or not, and it's easily noticeable. And um, I don't know if you really need to. If you want to talk about one research project, maybe like you can. But I don't, as I said, the personal statement is not something I weigh very heavily.
And
Dr.
it's also
Baker,
an
yeah.
opportunity to add color to your application. So when you do your CV, every one of your research projects is going to have a little narrative of what it did. And so we can read about what you did in your research lab when we look at that. So the personal statement's an opportunity for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself. And, without going wild, but, you know, like Dr. Kim says, after you've read the first 5 pages, the last thing you want to do is read a personal statement that's just kind of repeating the same stuff um, that you've already read. And, the research years are interesting. A few years ago, I think it was kind of a key thing, and everybody's doing them now. And, one of our current fifth year residents wrote 42 papers without a research year. So I'm kind of thinking, who are the people that can turn out 5 to 10 without doing a research year? And my personal opinion is 5 to 10 is the sweet spot. You get 20, 30 papers, you begin to wonder, is this somebody that likes to write papers or do surgery? So it's like, not to like throw a curveball in the group here, but don't fret if you don't have like 25 papers. I mean, if you go 5 to 10, at least when I'm looking at it, that's enough. And then obviously first author, impact factor of the journal, things like that come into play as well. Um, but the research year, it's interesting. I'm going to diverge a little bit. It was designed, I think, in the name of, we so many things went pass no pass. The grades at Georgetown are pass no pass, the boards are pass no pass, and this was all done to kind of lower even the playing field. Well, what it's done is it's pushed the chemical reaction into a research year to find a way to distinguish yourself. Well, who has the resources to take a year out of medical school to do a research year? Are those the very people that you were trying to help by making everything pass no pass? Or are these the people that have maybe a little bit more financial means to rent an apartment? Because at Georgetown, if you're on financial aid, you are not allowed to be paid. And if you get paid, you withdraw from medical school, which means you don't have access to the charts or the OR or anything. So I think ACEPS should maybe reinvent. That's actually a research project. One of my researchers looking in is to try to kind of do a socioeconomic analysis of the population of people that take a year out to do research year and really say, have we even the playing field, or have we even tipped it more in favor of people with resources? So anyway, that's just a little sidebar on the research year.
I think it's funny that Dr. Baker said all that, because I do also, because I think right now the research here is almost like a nuclear arms race. Who can do more? And so it's funny. I'm not the only one that looks at it this way. I actually look for candidates who didn't do a research year and they have 5 to 10 publications,
Yep.
because that tells me that they really hustled, or they knew that they wanted to do maybe plastic surgery early too, but those are the ones who actually were able to juggle a clinic, basically a school curriculum and do research. I think, to me, that tells me what kind of person that person is more. They're organized. They're able to, pull through all of that and get it done. That's more, like, to me, realistic of how residency is going to be versus a research year. So I kind of look for those candidates, actually.
I do too, because I am fully aware that not everybody has the resources to do a research year. So if I get somebody who didn't do it, who looks pretty good, we're going to take a hard look at them. And,
But
it's,
but yeah, but I do still look at candidates who do research here, because not every program is able to provide that kind of early exposure, or
yeah.
and things like that, and they're great candidates who've done research years, and it's probably me myself, probably, if I had to go through it, maybe I needed to do a research year. So I'm not saying those are the only candidates I like. I have
No,
plenty
not
of
at all.
people. Not at all. I have a lot of research students, so
But
it's
if you didn't do a research year, you're not off the list by any means. And
exactly.
my personal opinion is I will scale your accomplishments knowing you didn't do the year to do what they did. And the one thing worse than not doing a research year is doing a research year and having zero productivity. That's the worst. And
That
and
is the
and where I
worst.
do think a research year is good is for the people that are at medical schools that don't have a program, because then it's an opportunity to get a year of mentorship, which I think is even more important than the research. Participate in rounds, go to the OR, get a gauge of what you're up against, in terms of applicant competition. So for that group, if you have the resources, I think it's a good thing to do. But I like your analogy of a nuclear arms race, Dr. Kim. We need a SALT treaty. You're all too young to know what that was.
No,
Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty.
Yeah.
no, those are very good points. As you both mentioned, research years are becoming much, much more common. And so it's good to see how program directors and programs are looking at that, and that you don't necessarily need a research year, but it's kind of up to your discretion of what you do that year. Another question that we got was, what would be your advice for those who are reapplying or applying from general surgery after a preliminary year when you're looking at their personal statements?
So you gotta talk about your preliminary year. Like, I think you should, in your personal statement, you can kind of, you know, there are plenty of candidates who are really strong and didn't match, or you can address the elephant in the room. You just address it head on. Just say, I didn't match because this is what I think. But I thought my applications were all strong, or whatever you think. And then you just say, that's why I decided to do a prelim year. And this is what I learned during my prelim year.
And say how well you performed, and hopefully
Yeah.
you have a PD letter from your general surgery program director that backs it up. But like I said, I mean, I think 10 years ago, it was kind of like damaged goods if you didn't match. I mean, I'll be totally honest. I would be like, oh, now I've seen so many good people don't match. I don't think that way at all. But I will expect you to have continued to excel on that transitional year, and but I think, that's what you want to do. And I tell our students that don't match, I'm like, this is your opportunity to show people what you can do. So it's going to require pain. I don't want to see social media out at, like, Adams Morgan, woohoo. I mean, this is going to be pain. You need to have blood in your eyes. You're not sleeping, you're reading, you're working, you're grinding. I mean, this is the equivalent of boot camp if you want it, and you're going to have to work for it. So,
There's nothing more than being a prelim, because you think you understand what it is like being a resident, but you really don't until you really are a resident. And so, doing a prelim year, you understanding and saying, this is what I learned, this is what happened, and this realistic, like honest personal statement, I think will get you far.
That is excellent and encouraging advice. And I want to remind everybody, as we're winding down here in the last couple, 8 minutes or so, if you have any questions that you want answered, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll make sure to get to them before we sign off. One question that I did want to ask, that we've been asked from kind of both parties here: what are some ways on the personal statements and letter of recommendations that DO students and IMG students who are looking to apply can distinguish themselves, or should they just apply regularly as anybody else? Or do you have any advice whatsoever for that situation?
I have to be
I
honest, that's hard. Go ahead, Dr. Baker.
no, I was going to say international. Some programs have had really good success. I don't think we've had an international resident before. Um, and it's mainly because we don't really know how to assess them. We don't know the letter writers. We don't know the grading criteria. We don't, it's just so difficult to assess. So unless an international student did like a year of research at Pittsburgh, and Vu Nguyen or Joe Losi called me and said this person's phenomenal, that would tip. In terms of DO students, we haven't had a DO student, but you know, if somebody did exceptional work, it's not as though we wouldn't take them, but you'd have to have a really exceptional application, well, everybody's exceptional, right? It's not like you need to be more exceptional than anybody else. It's just, like I said, we're going to get 80 people that are just like Top Gun pilots. And now we've got to take them down to 40. And that is an extremely difficult task. In my experience, IMGs and DOs typically don't end up in that pool when we're making those final decisions. Not to say they couldn't, it's just historically, I haven't seen it as much.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember the last time I don't think we have taken an international student. And I think same with the DO, it's hard for us to, that person has to be pretty exceptional, and I think they needed to hustle from the beginning, you know, and, get letters from people. They had to do a lot of sub-ice in plastic surgery, and
Yeah.
basically it's kind
I
of like
think
almost a program with a place without a program kind of situation.
Yeah, I think Yale and Pittsburgh have taken international students, but I think in those cases they did research at those institutions. So the institutions really knew them well. They weren't kind of coming out of the cold, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great advice. I think, it's hard to navigate that situation, but it really is about, finding somebody who's going to represent you the best that you can and finding someone that's going to vouch for you. Um, One last question that we also had was now we're kind of in this season with virtual meet and greets. And I was just wondering, how do you think students can kind of take advantage of this and use this to their favor as they're going through the application cycle?
Funny you asked, because Georgetown's having a meet and greet pretty soon. You'll have to go on and look. My residents gave me the graphic today. Our meet and greets are, you go on, I might give a brief like, hello, I'm the program director, welcome to Georgetown, but the applicants want to talk to the residents, so I'm going to be off of it pretty darn quick. But I do think they're going to have breakout rooms with different level residents, and you can get to know the residents and get a sense of the program. The thing is though, is just because you go on the meet and greet doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get an interview. So where we focus our energy is once we get the interview group, then we will have, we usually the day before the interview have about a 1 hour session where the residents do breakout rooms and all the applicants can kind of talk to them. Actually, that was COVID. Now we do it in person, close to campus. So what about you, Dr. Kim?
Yeah, we already had our meet and greet, I think, a few weeks ago. And we give a little overview of the program. Like it might be an opportunity for you to hear about the program, maybe the strengths, and then we leave, like the faculty, like the PD, and we leave. And then, I mean, I stay for answer a few questions, and then basically I leave, and the applicants talk to the students. But it's not a place where it's gonna, for anybody to get an interview or anything like that.
I think
We
if I were, oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Dr. Kim. I was going to say
We
if I were a student, I might use the meet and greets to determine how I want to use my signals. Like if you just went on and said these residents are a bunch of jerks, and I was going to single them, but after that meet and greet, I wouldn't. It might be a way to help you figure out where you would be at home.
Yeah, yeah. We also do a little pre-interview like get together and like the day before, just like Georgetown does.
And as I tell my son, life is an interview. Every observable action you do, somebody is forming an opinion. So at that meet and greet, behave. I will tell you a story of Kyle Eberlin, was an AI at Georgetown. He's now, I think, the program director at Harvard, but I was watching him from across the room and he was getting the coat of every woman and putting it on. And I was like, what a gentleman. And he was an outstanding AI as well. But, I was on the other side of the room. He didn't know I was looking at him. And, just, have a glass of wine, be social, do not overindulge, don't be a nonstop talker, let other people talk. I mean, honestly, that's a huge part of the interview because these are the animals in their natural habitat, as opposed to when you come into the one-on-one interview. And you would be surprised and you'd say, like, well, you'd have to be a complete idiot to do something stupid, but you'd be surprised that there's always 10 or 15% of the people that just can't seem to manage that. So just really, really, really just, you know, very, very appropriate behavior, which ideally you shouldn't have to try to do. It should just be who you are.
That's great advice. We do have one question. Now medical students are having to start earlier and earlier, and there is a question in the chat that's saying, briefly, if you could just describe advice for a first-year medical student looking to find their way in plastic surgery. Do you have a few words for them if they're on this live?
Well, I think if you're a first year medical student, you're a little late. We're looking for people in seventh grade that have started study clubs and done rat dissections. So, but if you came to it late and you were a first year medical student, hope is not lost. So, no, on a serious note, I'd say just, reach out to the program director, reach out to the interest group. We have first year students, second year students, third year students. Some of them decide they don't want to do plastic surgery. Some of them come in late, some of them know and stick with it. But that's what we're here for. You're paying a lot of money in medical school, and our job as faculty is to help coach you and provide all the resources you need to be the best version of yourself. Hopefully, mentor you in a way that you kind of achieve the metrics we're trying to kind of teach you so that you can earn that good letter. That's my philosophy. I don't write everybody a good letter. I spend a lot of time mentoring first, second, and third year students and fourth year students, hoping that after that mentorship, they will be performing in a way that I can just write this great letter because they've earned it.
Yeah, I do the same. Yeah, basically, yeah. People who I would say just reach out to somebody first. Probably the program director usually is the first one, and if they can, they will refer you to somebody else or something. I often get it that way. But yeah, we start first and second year. We have a plastic student interest group too, and usually, the students I mentor, I've mentored them since probably prior to their third year, and the letters that I write usually are because I know them pretty well. I've mentored them pretty well, and they're all different though. They're not all the same package or same outcome at the end, but they all have their different strengths.
And
That's
everybody I know in academic plastic surgery, I mean, literally everybody I know is there for the students and the residents. So don't be intimidated. We're in academics because that's part of what we really enjoy about our job. And I know at your stage of the game, oh my gosh, Dr. Kim, at UCSF, or oh, Dr. Baker. My wife still says, when you come into this house, you're the intern, I'm the boss. I mean, at the end of the day, we're human, man. So don't be intimidated. Just come up and talk to us because, really that's like one of the most enjoyable parts of my job right now is being able to play in the role in the development of students and residents and things like that. And I think I speak for almost everybody I know in academic plastic surgery, and certainly everybody I know in the ACEPS Society.
that's
I just want
excellent.
to end something. I was like, oh no, not just because Dr. Baker said it. I'm going to be seeing all these, students hanging up jackets at my social.
That's certainly going to be the go-to move now. So it looks like everybody is going to have to find something original.
Yeah.
But the last thing also that I'm sure that Milan and I can agree on for first and second year medical student, go to conferences. It's probably the best way to meet a lot of academic plastic surgeons in a short period of time. Just be conscious of the way in which you do it. Try and find them at a time that seems appropriate, and don't, when you do interject yourself into their conversation, just be respectful and understand your role. But with that, I would love to give a huge thank you to Dr. Kim, Dr. Baker, Milan, Garnes Society, everybody who was involved in making this event possible. Thank you so much for donating your time. This was very, very informative, educational, and there will be more to this series. I believe we are also planning on doing doing an interview live in the next coming months, so keep an eye out for that. Also, this is going to be recorded and posted on the ACEPS and Garnes Instagram page. So if you found something that was very helpful to you, please make sure to tell your friends, your fellow sub-Is, fellow medical students, and have them come check it out. But thank you so much.
Can I
Yeah,
just,
Dr. Baker.
I was just going to say, since we're talking about conferences, I think a really particularly good conference is the ACEPS National Conference, which this year is in Nashville. That was kind of a nothing, and over the last 3 or 4 years, it's become one of my favorite meetings of the year. But that's a very target-rich audience for medical students. You're going to have chairs, program directors, APDs, coordinators, and most of the lectures and educational panels are really around evaluating students, the match, resident performance. You will get a lot of information that's highly relevant to you as you approach your application in plastic surgery. So if for some reason you had the opportunity to do that, I think it's probably the best meeting of the year for somebody in their third or fourth year of medical school applying to plastic surgery.
Hmm. It may be a little late for the fourth year, but probably third year.
Yeah, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
It's in
But
February.
yeah, I will see people at PSTM though.
Yeah.
They're all going to come up and say hi to you now, Dr. Kim.
Yeah.
It's no problem. You know, just before we go, yeah, do what Carter recommended. Do it, there's a correct way to do it, I remember a few years ago, students were coming up to us and giving us business cards with QR codes about themselves. And, I think we share that amongst our PDs. And I was like, you got to tell your students to stop doing this because this is probably not working. So I think people have stopped doing that. But yeah, there's a right way of doing things.
Absolutely. And again, everybody
I
just
haven't heard of.
please be respectful, and again, try to find them at the opportune time when they're not having a conversation with their friends that they haven't seen in a really long time, and you just interrupt that. You'll find out when you've done that. It's a very awkward feeling. So just try and be tasteful. But
All right.
anyway,
Well, I've got to get on with my seventh graders because I'm doing a live thing for them on how to become a plastic surgeon now.
Oh, love that. They're starting early.
All right,
Yeah.
you guys.
excellent.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank you
much.
so
Really
much,
appreciate it.
everybody. Have a great night.
Thank
Okay,
you.
take care. Bye bye.